live. Welcome to the Hempfield Area Special Meeting of School Board for tonight. Would you all please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Mr. Alfieri. Here. Ms. Bragic.
Here.
Ms. Bretz.
Here.
Ms. Zibatoni.
Here.
Mr. DeAugustine.
Here.
Dr. Smith.
Here.
Mr. Ward.
Here.
Dr. Learn.
Here.
Dr. Bompiani.
Present. Okay, Dr. Willicke, would you mind the mission statement for the school district?
Sure. Good evening, everyone. The Hempfield Area School District and its commitment to excellence shall engage and educate all students for personal success through a shared responsibility with the student, family, and community in a safe, secure, and nurturing environment.
Thank you. Reading of the notice for the special meeting. The purpose of this meeting is to discuss the possibility of full remote instruction for students based on the county's designation and to discuss preparations for the full reopening of school when a situation presents itself. I personally want to welcome you all, and as our board welcomes you here, we think this is important enough that we did call a special meeting. We think it's very important to listen to all you face to face, as many people wanted to come and speak. We do have rules for speaking, and we're going to try and bend the rules as much as we can. You're supposed to keep it at 3 minutes. And then we cut it off. Also, we don't want you to be repetitive, so if somebody's coming up here saying one thing, if you're just repeating, everybody repeats the same thing, that's counterproductive. We might be here a long time. However, seeing that there's not that many people that have elected to speak, we'll try and be as lean as we can to listen to everything that we can. We have a few of them that we'll start with in a minute that were emailed to us, and then I'll begin calling a few people up. I want to let you know, though, the only thing I, as board president, am going to look for, please, no disrespect at all, and I'm not accusing, I'm not saying someone's going to. The staff has worked very, very hard on their plans of reopening, staying open. Everybody has their opinion on how this virus is affecting them and their children, and everybody who works here has their opinion on how we should go about reopening and protecting our kids. None of the decisions that were made by the administration, by Dr. Willicke or anybody else, or this school board were made because they think something political and that's what they were doing. That's not the case. Or they were made just because they feel strongly this is the way it is and it has to be that way. That's not the case. We've been given we've been dealt a hand with cards that have been stacked against us, I believe. And because of that, we have to make a decision that might be better served to be made higher up of the ones talking to all the experts rather than making just recommendations and letting it to the local board to decide actually what their constituents want and their students want, and we know the lay of the land. I remember that's what they told us in June. So I'm not going to keep talking. Vince, is there anything you asked for the special meeting? Is there anything you wanted to say before we get started?
No, I think the biggest thing, last week we were told of the impending decision by the PD and the Department of Health that if the county stays insubstantial, that they would be recommending that all districts go to remote learning. And I think it's important that anytime a decision of this magnitude is being made, that will essentially affect families, 5,300 students and 650 some employees. I think we should be as transparent as possible. So I just think it's important to hear what our community has to say and how a closure will ultimately affect them. I would also like our residents to hear how the administration and we as a board feel about the recommendation. In this particular case, I just didn't feel like sending a letter was going to be sufficient. Second reason, obviously, I wanted to have the meeting, and it might sort of take a backseat today a little bit, is to discuss the next phase of our plan, which would be to open full time. While I know it may not, again, be the #1 topic tonight, I think it's important to get the ball rolling so that the public is aware what fully opened looks like. You know, if the opportunity presents itself to open 5 days a week, you know, I don't want to waste valuable time getting there. And I know that this board is excited about getting there, but obviously we're dealt a little bump here. I know the administration's working hard on the plan, but I would like to start the discussion sooner rather than later to get there. So that's my reason, Doc, for calling the meeting, and I appreciate the fact that a few board members agreed to have it.
Okay, so we'll move on to the hearing of citizens. And Mr. Rigger, would you mind read the emails? What do you have, 4 of them over there that were sent to you?
Thank you, Doc. We actually have 6 of them
Okay.
that I'll be reading. The first one is from Mickey Fisher, and she indicates, "This is not at all what we need right now. I'm a full-time worker along with my significant other. We do not have the means to be there to guarantee our daughter is going to do all of her work or watching the meets. She has already told me if the school goes remote, she is done and refuses to do any of this work. She can't learn in this manner. She is just a hands-on, face-to-face learner. I do not have the proper learning environment for this to take place. Her grades lowered last year when she went remote learning and has put a stress on her family if this happens again. You all really need to think about the impact that it's going to have on the families that do not have the means or proper learning environment to ensure these students are getting what they need to be successful at school. Please think hard about this because our family will be impacted very much if it goes back to remote learning, and I hate to see my child struggle because she is not about to learn this way." Our second one is from Jolie Olson, and she indicates, "I know you are all facing a tough decision tonight and wish you the very best with this. I would like to have you look at the poll I placed on the Hempfield area school community group. As of the time of this letter, it stands 263 in favor of staying open, 62 saying not to open, and 10 undecided. I hope you consider the voice of the parents in your decision. Thank you for all of your continued support and for all that you do for our students." Our next one is from Ashley Harburger. Ashley writes, "Hello. I wish to voice my opinion in regards to the discussion of the board's decision in closing school related to COVID-19 cases in Westmoreland County. I feel that the school should not move to remote learning due to the fact that my children's school, Maxwell Elementary, has yet to have a confirmed case within the school. I have yet to see the direct correlation with the schools and the confirmed cases currently. There have been large outbreaks in nursing homes and in the prisons in the county that are largely contributing to the influx of cases. For government officials and the DOH to recommend to schools to close is not fair, seeing that we can contribute to have people frequent Walmart and other stores, restaurants, bars, gatherings, and sports on a daily basis. But at the same time, we are not allowed to have our kids in school. If they want schools to be closed, then they need to start closing other things as well, just not take away from our kids. Our children are the future. We have no idea how this is affecting them and can only assume that it is going to be extremely negative. We cannot continue to take away in-person learning. Remote learning is nowhere near as effective as in-person, and experts have already stated this. I really hope the Hempfield Area School District looks at all of the data before deciding to just close the entire district to in-person learning. Obviously, with the influx of testing, cases are going to be up. Thank you, and I really hope that my children do not have to suffer again." The fourth one we received is from Brian and Marcy Loises. And they write, "Dear Hempfield Board and Administration, thank you for the opportunity to voice our opinion on the matter at hand. We've been following the virtual meetings and believe you've done an exceptional job working through the challenges to get our children back to school. So thank you for your hard work and dedication. We strongly support keeping schools open and oppose closing down, overseeing a rise in positive cases in Westmoreland County, which include a lot of nursing homes and prisons. Both of our children need to be in school for many reasons. Our 8th grader, who used to say he couldn't stand being at school and wanted to be homeschooled, has completely changed his mind after being stuck learning from home at the end of last school year. He wants to be full-time now, and he is afraid his grades will slip again if the school shuts down. My 5th grader gets pulled for special help and also has experienced the struggle learning outside of the true classroom environment. Our children need to be in school, and we know the majority of the parents feel the same way. If people are fearful, then the option to learn from home is there. I see people with their children every day, all through society, in every capacity, with the same or higher risk than what risk are in our school buildings. And our schools are being cleaned daily. Do we stop driving in a thunderstorm to avoid getting struck by lightning? Our children's future comes first, and although we act with wisdom, we will not bow to the knees with fear. After all, shutting down is based on recommendations. There is evidence, and other districts and states are doing well, holding tight to their positions, and I have confidence in our board and administration to do the same. Our 5th one is from Diana Ank. My statement is that if the school goes virtual, kids are going to suffer, especially those with learning disabilities that need to be in school to get the learning support they need. So if you decide to go virtual, the school needs to keep those students with learning disabilities in school or access to learning supports. And our 6th and last one is from Lowry Hagen-Togler, and she states, do not close Hempfield schools. CDC, WHO, and AAP all agree that keeping kids out of school does far more harm than good. This is especially true for children with special needs, like my son. Closing school always keeps parents out of the workplace, contributing to poverty and all of its comorbidities. And that concludes the ones we received via email.
Thanks. Thank you, Bob. I appreciate it. We also had, I think, 5 emails sent us and 2 last week. Most of those were for keeping the school open, and 1 was definitely against it. I'd like to move on to the hearing of citizens, and I do know this one young lady is a high school student, and I'd like to call her first, Madeline Carter. Now, when you speak, all of you, the microphone's over this side?
It is, it's on this side.
Over here. When you're speaking, there'll be a time limit they'll show. Unless I cut you off, don't cut off automatically, but try and speed it up, anybody who's speaking, and after that. But Madeline, go ahead.
Thank you. Is this? Yeah, okay. So I prepared a speech for tonight. It might be over 3 minutes, but if that's a problem, I'll happily email it to you, but I would much rather read the whole thing so that you kind of fully understand all of my points, but
Go ahead and start.
thank you. Good evening. My name is Madeline Carter. I'm a junior here at Hempfield. I'm currently enrolled in various AP and honors courses here at the high school. From joining National Art Honor Society to becoming captain of the Color Guard, I've always been very grateful for the opportunities provided for me here at Hempfield. I cannot express my sympathy for those who have been affected by this pandemic. I do everything to protect myself and others from the virus. I wear a mask at all times, wash my hands, and sanitize myself and my belongings frequently, because while I do not want to get sick, I have people in my life who are at high risk for the virus and cannot get sick. Of what I have witnessed at the high school, students and staff alike have been nearly 100% compliant with the CDC guidelines and state regulations. I'd like to address some problems I've seen with the current curriculum. While I realize this is an unprecedented time, I'd like to offer some insight from a student perspective. I'm highly inconvenienced by our current back and forth hybrid system. We are wasting much valuable time trying to fix technical issues every class period. Some days we waste up to 15 minutes in one 40-minute period. And when we are virtual, while I appreciate the effort at making it seem as if we are still in the classroom with the rest of our classmates, we waste so much time relearning things for the virtual people and talking about things that only apply to the in-school students. Our quality of education is much lower with this schedule for both in-school and virtual students, despite the efforts to make online and in-person schooling seamless. Meaning, in order to keep up with our classes, we have to spend more time teaching ourselves the material. However, this is often impossible because 1, we have to follow the bell schedule, 2, we have so many classes we have to do this for, and 3, we now have to spend hours completing homework as well as the classwork we didn't finish during our designated period. Following the bell schedule while online has created some problems for me as well. Mainly, I feel it would be much more efficient if virtual students could manage their own time, similar to what we did in the spring, where we could do each of our subjects' classwork and homework at the same time. This hybrid on-again, off-again schedule is too inconsistent. It is incredibly difficult to keep track of which days of the week I have class, not to mention what day of the cycle it is, or my double period of physics is. In fact, it's only the first quarter and we've already had multiple students come in late or entirely miss our double period because they didn't know what day of the cycle it was. These schedules are too complicated to keep track of and are incredibly stress-inducing. Every day I spend, give or take, 12 hours in school, and my grades are still slipping. That's not including my breaks like lunch or band. This has been ridiculously overwhelming for me, and I'm constantly stressed out, which has affected my sleep schedule, in which I have insomnia. I'm running out of gas. Something needs to change. Can I continue?
What's that?
Not continue. Sorry.
They probably held up the sign.
It's time's up.
How much longer do you have, honey?
Not much.
Good, just finish it up.
Thank you. Junior year is infamously a very stressful and difficult year on a normal year, and it is arguably the most important year in high school. Now we have to deal with everything that is going on top of this. As of right now, juniors like myself have to take the PSATs, the Keystones that we didn't get to take last year, the AP exams, and the SATs. My scores in those exams and my current grades are vital to my future college, career, and life. I'm doing the best that I can, but my transcript doesn't show that. Just that my grades are steadily falling. We need a better system to help the students and their futures, because we're doing everything we can and it is still not enough. We can't do anything to fix our situation, but you can. So that's why I'm here tonight. The students more than anything need consistency. We need a consistent schedule. We need to be either 100% in school again or 100% virtual this year. I would prefer to be back in school, but if you feel it is too dangerous, all virtual is a good alternative. I came here tonight because I'm drowning and I need your help. My fellow classmates and I need your help, so please consider a student's perspective during your decision-making process. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Madeline. So any other students out here? I don't recognize any other names. Does any other student want to talk, want to speak? Okay, so move on to Thomas McCarthy from New Stanton.
Sure. I was just wondering, I really forget what I put on that paper. I was such in a stress, but I think one thing was about the virus size due to the pore size of a mask, and I just think it's damaging. A lot of dentists are saying that mask mouth is happening, and I didn't, my daughter never had a cavity her whole life, and she's pretty proud of that, and I am too as a parent. And it's like if everybody thinks these masks work, go ahead and wear your mask, but us ones who don't want to wear it, don't wear it. But then again, that'll probably get into some silly WHO rule or CDC rule or something like that, but that's the science of that. And what else did I have on my paper?
You have on damage not attending school, masks, poor size and virus size, and then school closing.
Oh, yeah, I'm totally against the school closing, and just the adverse effects of not being in class, like already stated by others, and nicely executed by a student herself. And it's pretty sad to hear her story, just especially people who need this in-school learning, and I hope the rest of you are all about that also, if you really do care about our students learning, because the science shows that is what's best. And it's just sad to see kids on a bus, too, wearing masks. They're like muzzled. Our kids are muzzled, like an animal, like a dog. It's just sad to see. And just think about the proms that you all got to attend, the dances, the Christmas dances, Halloween ceremonies and stuff. It's just really sad and selfish for people to be so selfish. And if only your grandmothers matter, why does anybody else's grandmothers matter? The cashier at Walmart, if they got to go to work and come home and spread it to their grandmother, why is teachers' grandmothers any more special than anybody else's? Especially like garbage men. They still got to go to work. All the doctors, they still got to go to work. They can't be afraid. If you're afraid, find another profession. And that's just obvious, you know? Comment?
We'll discuss the whole thing afterward, and if there's specific questions, we can get to them. But I think we'll just handle it afterward, if that's okay with you, Thomas. You're staying, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll listen to everybody, and then we'll try and lump everything in and talk about them.
Yeah, it's pretty sad there ain't more parents here who care.
Thank you very much, Thomas. Lisa Altschaffel, 2 students in Maxwell. Hi, Lisa.
I just want to say thank you for letting us do this in person and having an opportunity for people to speak and say how they feel about the subject. I'm a small business owner in Greensburg, so obviously I have 2 children myself in elementary school. I have multiple employees with students in the school. You know, it's very challenging, right? We're trying to help these mothers take time to work with their kids. My personal experience is with the elementary students, and I certainly appreciate the fact that we've been able to do that 5 days a week. But last year, in the way that it was set up, just didn't work. It was very difficult. I know the children have been going through testing, so one of my questions would be, are you taking into consideration the test scores that you're seeing? You know, I have one on each end, one that probably does well with an online environment and one that does not. You know, when you're in 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, you know, that's the time when they're learning to read, math, things like that. How are we going to make up for that? You know, Maxwell, someone had said that had no cases, right? I saw today, Dr. Willicke put out, there was 1 teacher, but that's 1 in the entire school. It's the first one that we had. I don't know how far that spreads, how many people have to be quarantined. But obviously, it's my understanding that this is a recommendation, not a requirement. So, you know, when in my business we look to what our peers are doing, I guess I would ask the same question of you. I also understand not every school in Westmoreland County is taking that recommendation, that there are a lot of, at least one that I know of that is going to stay the course and follow the system that they have in place, which is keeping the elementary students in school 5 days a week, and then a hybrid method for the upper grade. So I just want to make sure that those are things that you're taking into consideration, the test scores that you're seeing from our students. I also have a fear. I'm well informed of how the school is funded and what happens when they go to charter schools. If we put all of our elementary students back into a virtual setting, how many are going to leave and go to a virtual school? We might be setting ourselves up for failure down the road, that they don't come back, and that's funding that's leaving our district. So I just wanted to say I hope these things are taken into consideration when you make this decision.
Thank you, Lisa. Before I call the next one up, I want to make sure all of you know we will discuss these items. Dr. Willicke's taking notes on some of these, and we'll let our feelings be known up here for you so you know it. So don't just run out after you ask the questions, too. So we'll move on to Tanya Vargo. West Hempfield Elementary.
Much for listening. I just wanted to say back in August when we started to get the emails about the kids returning to school, I was very proud to be a Hempfield parent because we were one of the trailblazer school districts that was sending students back while other school districts in our area were being much more conservative and much more timid, going for a virtual learning while Hempfield was, I thought, being strong. So I just wanted to make sure that you guys didn't lose sight of that strength now when we need it the most. I am against remote learning. Sorry. My husband and I are both essential workers. We have been since the start of COVID, and we've been working every single day. I have one and only daughter who's with me. She's 6 years old, and I literally and legally cannot leave her home for virtual learning. So I implore, and the same sentiments as the other lady, we need to have elementary school in person. I have no other options for my daughter to do virtual online learning because there will be nobody there to monitor her and observe and help her while she's trying to learn because my husband and I will be working. And we don't have resources like grandparents or brothers and things like that nearby to help out. So I'll literally be stuck. I will have to probably put her in daycare and pay anywhere from $800 to $1,000 for her to be somewhere during the day while we work. And I have no idea if the daycare is set up to help students with online learning. So I hope that you keep the elementary schools in person. If you have to go remote for the rest of the schools, at least for the elementary school, because she's too young to be on her own. So I hope you take that into consideration. I also reiterate what the other lady said about it's just a recommendation. You don't have to follow what he's saying or what the governor's recommendations are. And I leave you with this last thought. Right before I got here, I read that Dr. Levine is now recommending that we don't spend the holidays with our families. And my first thought was, that's ridiculous. And if you thought that too, if you read that sentiment, then you think they're being too conservative. And if you think they're being too conservative, then that should give you your answer right now about how they're making their recommendations. I think they're being a little bit too conservative and sheepish, and I think we should just move forward and power through. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much, Tanya. We'll move on to Chad Wazo? Wazoo?
You should have Mr. DeAugustine say it. I went to school with Mr. DeAugustine. I'm here tonight as a parent and a former graduate and a teacher in a neighboring district that is not following the recommendation passed down to the county. My son, Cash, is a first grade student at West Point Elementary School. And last week, when I received the message from the district that you were considering closing all schools, I found that to be disappointing. To go to that kind of platform is honestly to go to a platform that's, speaking from a teacher's perspective, an unsuccessful platform. Especially when you consider there are certain schools like, for example, West Point Elementary, that hasn't had a single reported case of COVID. This is a decision that the board, and I'm sure you're not taking lightly. I'm asking you to put aside all the political stuff. I'm not here to get on a political tangent. I just want you to focus on what is going to be best for the education of all students in Hempfield school districts, including my son. My son, Cash, who's in first grade, has already lost an entire 9 weeks of learning in kindergarten due to COVID. And with your decision tonight, could potentially lose more valuable learning time. A time period when his academic learning is most important. Learning the fundamentals of reading, writing, and mathematics. Skills that will be important for the rest of his academic career. Now, I know that the district will say that we will still be providing an education remotely. Although, I also received word that the district doesn't have enough devices to support every single student remotely. So I don't know how that would be possible. As I said, as an educator in a neighboring district and someone who has taught remote learners, I know that this is not successful education. It's not as challenging to students. This is not a criticism of the teachers in Hempfield that I feel have done an excellent job under the circumstances. But to expect an elementary student to sit at a computer for hours, day after day, in order to learn is not realistic or effective. The reality is that if the board, administration, teachers, and parents want students to succeed academically and socially, the only way for this to occur is in person. I just ask the board to remember that this is a recommendation from the state, not a mandate. I want to end my speech tonight by having the board and administration ask themselves the following questions. If your child, or if you had a child that were in first grade like mine, and his or her school was switching to digital only, do you truly believe that he or she is getting the best possible education? That their learning experience will be exactly the same as if they were in person learning? That they will be able to master the tools necessary to succeed later in life, like reading, writing, and mathematics? If you answered no to any of these questions, as I have as a parent, then your decision tonight is simple. Keep the schools open, ignore the recommendation, and continue the path you've been going currently. I want to thank you for your time and have a nice evening.
Chad, thank you very much. And number 6, Michelle Gordon.
Hi there, I'm Michelle
Michelle.
Gordon. Thank you for your time this evening. I have a son, Drew, who's in Wendover in 8th grade, and a son, Sean, who's in 11th grade here at the high school. Both of my boys have been doing hybrid this year. I appreciate the hybrid that Hempfield has been offering. I do feel it's been the most successful one compared to neighboring districts. It's so important for the kids to be able to hear from their teachers every day and to be in the class with their teachers every other day at this time. I'm asking you to make it a priority to keep children in the classroom and to be in person at school, even if the Department of Health says otherwise. You must stand up for our children. If you're not willing to go to a 5-day in-person days a week, you must continue the hybrid of attending in person every other day with the goal of not shutting down the schools and allowing those students who want to attend in person to be able to attend in person. With the high school shut down for the past 2 weeks, my 11th grader has gotten increasingly frustrated and wants to be in school. I'm sure you have experienced the difficulties of trying to have meaningful discussions in a Zoom meeting. Even if it's more difficult, and that's even more difficult to have a good classroom discussion online. My son is trying to learn AP Physics and AP Calc on a teeny tiny Chromebook screen. So these classes continue to build on prior information, and getting behind now would be very detrimental. My son's an honor student at the top of his class. If he is getting frustrated, I can only imagine what is happening to more moderate students. Has Hempfield already lost kids who are so far behind right now that they do not see the purpose of returning to school and may drop out? Sorry, I can't breathe through this thing. As a school board, your number one priority needs to be to have in-person classes. You need to be the ones who look at the state recommendations and question them. And you need to have the guts to stand up for our students and have your own COVID policies. A question you should ask yourself: just because the county is substantial spread, why are we shutting down schools that do not have any current COVID cases? I believe Stanwood, they said West Point, whichever. It makes no sense. Or even schools with very minimal cases. Classes at the high school can't be contributing to the community spread because they have not been in school. According to an article in the Wall Street Journal, the CDC is already looking at reducing the number of days that children and teenagers need to quarantine after an exposure from 14 days to 7 because of the lack of spread in this age group and the increasing need for these kids to be in school. I even know of 2 Hempfield families where the parents got COVID, none of the teenagers got sick, and they never tested positive. What the district really needs to do is increase the tolerance of when you shut down a school. Instead of a specific number of infections per school, how about a percentage of infections in the student body? 5 COVID students in a school of 200 is very different than 5 COVID students in a school of 2,000. And I believe that's the number we were at when the high school shut down. Arbitrary numbers recommended by the state do not work for all schools. This truly needs to be determined on a local level, and you need to have the guts. Should I go on, Tony, or
How much longer do you have, Michelle?
probably at least another minute, minute and a half?
Go ahead.
I believe that the arbitrary numbers recommended by the state do not work for all schools. This truly needs to be determined on a local level, and you need to have the guts to stand up for the kids of Hempfield and keep them in school. Continue to provide the number of cases in the district, although I know I'm getting PTSD every time my Remind app dings, wanting to know what school's going to get shut down. But let it be up to a family to decide if they want their child to continue to go in school in person, or if they feel the cases are climbing too fast, they can choose to stay at home and be virtual. Continue to look at ways to protect the teachers while they are in with their students. If you're saying to close down the schools to protect the most vulnerable, these students who are missing out on a good education are the most vulnerable. Having a good basis of in-person education will help these kids succeed later in life. Again, how many students are we already losing because they're just too far behind right now? Hempfield's already providing choices to protect the most vulnerable and those with pre-existing conditions. You've given us the options of hybrid learning or all online learning. Everyone has a choice. If you have an at-risk person at home, you can choose to keep your child at home and work online. If you work in a nursing home or you work with other at-risk people, you can choose to have your kids stay home. If we ever get back to 5 days a week, please continue the hybrid model with classes online every day. That will help any child that must be kept home due to an exposure or another illness. The virus is not going away, so we're going to have to learn to live with it. But it is truly the responsibility of the parent or guardian to decide what's best for the family, what risks they are willing to take, and it's the responsibility of the school district to have in-person school options for the families that want it. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. And Matt and Kim, I'm not ignoring you on this, but I just want to make sure everybody gets their fair chance to talk as much as possible. Jerry Horniak's our next speaker. Daughter at the high school and son at Wendover Middle School.
Thank you for letting me come here this evening and speak. I praise all of you who've shown up tonight. It is sad to see that more parents aren't here this evening. That being said, I'm a numbers person, as is Dr. Wolicki. I listened into the last school board meeting on Monday. There are 350,000 people in Westmoreland County. Today there were 71 cases of COVID. That's only 20 out of every 100,000 people in Westmoreland County that got COVID. In the state, in the last 2 days, 4,000 people were diagnosed with COVID. On average, that's 2,000 people a day. That's only 2.44 per 100,000 people in the state. I remember Dr. Bompiani last week saying that if we were to meet a 5% threshold for closing the schools, that would have to be 87 children out of the high school children. My opinion is testing has gone up 4 times as much in Pennsylvania in the last month. So when we were having 500 cases a day, we weren't doing 4 times the testing. Today we're doing 4 times the testing. That's why the number of cases have gone up from 500 a day to 2,000 a day. People weren't getting tested as much when the first spike happened. The percentages are the same despite the numbers continuing to rise. I work in healthcare myself. I have to go to work every single day and pray that I don't work with a COVID patient and bring that disease home to my kids and my family. I've worked with patients who had COVID and had no idea that they had COVID. A day later, they went to the hospital, tested positive, and I was to not quarantine myself, not shut down myself, but I continued to go to work every single day. I just had to monitor myself for symptoms. I think this is what we can do in the school district. Have parents sign waivers before they go to school to monitor that they don't have symptoms before they go to school. I can speak personally. My daughter and my son have been in quarantine for the last 2 weeks. They're 2 of the 142 children that were put in quarantine that did not have the COVID virus. My daughter was brought off of quarantine as of yesterday. It killed me to watch her sit at home, even though she's a high school student, to not display any symptoms whatsoever and be stuck in our house. My son is still in quarantine up until tomorrow. The depression that I see from him and them both not being in school, not being with their friends, not being able to leave our house, it's not right to do that to my children. I have 5 points and I'll try to be brief. These are questions. I just spoke of the children being quarantined in the district. As of Monday, it was 142 or more. Are any of these students that are being quarantined, are they testing positive for COVID? I know several that were tested, and were shown to be negative. Does the school district have any type of thoughts on if a child is in quarantine, if they're tested negative after 5 days, 7 days, can they be let back into school if school will remain open? I saw my time's up. I just have 4 more questions to ask, if that's okay.
Go ahead.
I know that the thoughts are by closing the school, we're going to stop spread in the community. But I don't know of any tool that is showing that the students and the teachers are spreading COVID through the school districts and out in the community. I see to the contrary. I believe that COVID is being spread in the community, and that's why teachers or students are having it, and it's increasing our numbers at Hempfield. My third question is, our online learning is much improved from the spring, but I was curious to know what type of measuring tools are we showing, what type of learning our children are doing from that. I know that their 9 weeks grades are going to be coming out here shortly, but do we have any other measures that if we go to full remote learning, that it's more beneficial than being in school? If full remote learning is showing that grades are dropping, would that constitute a reason to send the kids back to school? My fourth question is when COVID first hit, there was a fear of too many teachers getting COVID and the students not being taught enough and the students not being safe in school. And I saw the text message today, the message that more teachers have gotten it. There was a question in the past that if there was an outbreak of teachers, that you could draw from a pool of community members, people who have college degrees, bachelor's degrees, master's degrees, PhDs, to come in and teach the kids temporarily to assist the children staying in school. I was just wondering if there had been any thoughts on that. And I know a lot of the parents, like myself, I have clearances, criminal record background checks, state police, child abuse checks. I'm sure that if people would clear that, I'm sure there are community members that would be willing to come in and, for lack of a better word, I guess be a substitute teacher if there are no substitute teachers to pull from. And then my last question is, and it's really why everybody is here today, is are you willing as a school board to give families a choice? If families want to keep their children in school, they should have a choice to keep their children in school. If families are afraid to send their children to school because of getting COVID, they should be able to stay home and get full remote learning. I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Sorry for being so long.
That's okay. Thank you very much, Jerry. It's an important subject. And the last person to speak is Michael Sirk. If somebody came in late and you didn't fill out a form and you want to speak, you can hurry up and go down front and fill out the form. We'll listen to you.
Thank you for having the meeting in person, and I wanted to thank the school board, the administration, and the district staff for all the hard work they have done. I know it started in the spring, having to move online, all the planning for reopening and operations so far this year. I appreciate that's a lot of work, and that there have been a lot of shifting goalposts that you're trying to stick with. Every policy is going to involve trade-offs, but in my view, the correct course moving forward is not really ambiguous at all. As we've heard, if the primary goal is the well-being of the students, we clearly need to move to in-person, full-time instruction as quickly as possible. As people have pointed out, the online learning simply is not sufficient and is okay as a stopgap measure, but we can't keep doing this indefinitely. And as Madeline so eloquently explained, it's taking a heavy emotional and psychological toll on the students. The wife of our youth pastor said that she has spoken with 19 different kids who've had some form of thoughts about suicide. These are not all Hempfield kids, they're not all from our church, but the point is, it's taking a tremendous toll. So the question becomes, what are the downsides of going full-time in person? And I have three three comments on that issue. First is there's clearly not any higher risk to either the students or the staff from going in full person in time than there is in the rest of their lives. There's also no evidence that opening schools regularly leads to an increase in spread in the community, or that closing schools will decrease the spread in the community. And I did chuckle at the update this morning that said that 3 of the Cyber Academy staff had tested positive, which sort of illustrates the point. The main reason I've heard from the board about not reopening fully is fear of liability. To me, that seems like highly improbable, but if that's the reason for staying closed or staying hybrid, those arguments need to be laid out in full so we understand what the reasoning is. It will not do to speculate about hypotheticals when we have such obvious concrete harms to the students right now. I would also point out it doesn't seem to make sense to focus only on liability from the virus. It seems like there's a potential for liability issues due to lost educational opportunities and things like depression and suicide, as there is for viral infections. And lastly, I think it's a major problem that the public health officials making these recommendations aren't publicly accountable. And since you are the publicly accountable officials, we need to know more about the details of the discussions with the public health officials. What are the deliberations? What are their arguments? What is the data that they're presenting? As has been alluded to, how many of the district cases were actually contracted at school? What is the percentage of cases in the district versus in the population more generally? Is there any evidence that schools are driving the recent increase in cases, or that closing them will cause a decrease? And are the public health officials weighing things like the mental and emotional health of the students, or are they solely focused on coronavirus cases? Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Michael. Okay, this next portion, there's nobody else that wants to speak, correct? Yes? Yes, you can. You can fill out the form after. Come on up and let us know who you are. Matt, do you have a form, or Bob? Okay, she can go back, and you can go back after you're done and fill it out.
I don't like speaking publicly, that's why I wasn't going to, but, and I did send an email. I'm Katrina Jamnick. I have a son in.
What's your name?
Katrina Jamnick.
Okay.
I have a daughter who's a 7th grader at Harold and a son who is a junior here. And I also had a senior who suffered through all of this. My boys are tech students, and I explained a lot in my letter, but one of the things too is the hands-on. My senior was in the auto program, and he missed out on tests. His girlfriend, it affected their after-schooling with their certificates that they weren't able to get properly. And my son now is in the sports therapy, and he's missed labs the last 2 weeks. And he's not able to do that online. So I agree with everything that's been said here, and I also want to fight for the tech kids. They need to be in school. They can't learn online. So, again, I have agreed with everything. It was in my email, and I just want to fight for the kids to be able to learn. It is an option for those that don't want to be here, so keep our option for those that need to be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Anybody else? Okay, so we're going to navigate these waters the best we can. I really appreciate, we all appreciate everybody speaking tonight. I think you've heard me enough in the past on the virtual meetings if you've been on them. We're dealt the hand that we're dealt, and we're making the decisions we can. All of us want our kids back to normal. Broke our heart last year to watch what happened, and we worked hard to put on a graduation for the students at the end, and broke our heart to watch them miss so much. And now looks like we're starting to relive the nightmare. all of us. So without going too much into it myself, Dr. Willicke, would you like to touch on some of the major questions that you saw or
Sure.
comment to those first?
There were just a couple things that I picked up, and then I think we'll have Mr. Rieger and Dr. Maloney answer some questions or show our student data. First, I just want to clarify that the decision to quarantine, that's a Department of Health decision. The school district does not make that decision. It's the Department of Health that determines who is quarantined and for what length of time. I also want to give a shout out to our cyber teachers. I think hearing, and certainly I, as an educator, understand parents wanting their children to have face-to-face instruction. That's certainly something that we are looking forward to as well in welcoming all children back to school. But I also want to say we do have a number of teachers who are providing elementary cyber instruction to kindergarten through fifth graders, and they're just doing a phenomenal job. So I don't want to give the impression that our online cyber program is not a quality program. I certainly believe that it is. I know there was some board members who had some questions in regards to our data for the district. So I've asked Mr. Rieger to share in regards to our staff data and Dr. Maloney in regards to students. Mr. Rieger, it looks like you're going to go first.
Great, thank you very much, Dr. Willicke. Just regarding the staff, and these are statistics from when we opened up the school. So from the first day of school through October 13th, the high school had 2 positive confirmed staff members. The middle schools had 1. Elementary schools had 3, 1 at the bus garage. From October 13th through the 26th, the high school had 2 positive. The middle school had 2 positive. The elementary schools had 6. One important thing to note here, within the past 96 hours, we have had 9 staff members test positive. I'll say that again. Within the past 96 hours, we had 9 staff members test positive. So they are in our thoughts and prayers as we are at this meeting this evening. Now, those staff members that are quarantined, since the first day of school through October 13th, the high school had 23 staff members quarantined. Middle schools had 8. Elementary schools had 26. The administration, custodial departments, and maintenance departments had 8. From October 13th through October 26th, the high school had 11 staff members quarantined. Middle schools had 6. Elementary schools had 14. And administration, custodial, and maintenance had 2 staff members quarantined. So just for totals, the total number of staff members who were quarantined from the first day of school through October 13th was 65. Staff members quarantined from October 13th through today, 33. That is correct. They are quarantined because of a close contact. They're quarantined because their spouse or immediate family member living within the same household has tested positive. So that is correct. Those are quarantines, not positive tests. Sure, and what we're seeing is a lot of people are going through the drive-throughs or to the docs in the box, and they're getting the rapid test. It's come to our knowledge that the rapid tests are about 80% accurate. Once a person is tested with that rapid test, it is sent out for further testing. We've recently had 2 individuals that tested negative with that rapid test, and then when it went out for further testing, came back positive. So each of these cases, we do work, as Dr. Willicke indicated, we do work with the Department of Health, and they assist us, and we assist them, I should say, in identifying close contacts, and then more importantly, issuing the quarantines. Yes, please. Well, 3 of the cases, we don't know where it came from. One of the cases, it looks like it was brought into the location. Well, we are working with the Department of Health on that. Sure, and I'll let Dr. Maloney,
So the entire bus was not quarantined. The students that are within 6 feet of the bus driver are quarantined, and that's required by the Department of Health. Correct. That's correct.
I can't address that.
It's the Department of Health.
Okay, so before we
can't
go
address
on
it.
too much longer, this isn't going to be a question and answer period. I mean, I'm sorry, I understand you have questions, and we'll try and take care of them afterward. Lisa, you can answer that, and I'm not trying to be rude to anybody, but there's a lot on the plate. There's going to be a lot of discussion up here. These questions will be asked up here too, I'm sure, and if you ask them questions, we'll be here till midnight. So we're going to move on with Lisa. Go ahead and do whatever you're going to do, and address that if you can, though.
Okay. So first of all, I want to start by reminding family members listening at home and those of you in the audience, if you have a student you are concerned about their emotional health, depression, I've heard a couple of times, we do have help for you. I would encourage you to reach out to your school's counselor to let the counselor know that you are concerned about your child. There is no one who knows your child better than you. So if you have a feeling that something's off, reach out to get help. We also have a service through every school in our district has the Student Assistance Program, so you can request help to get outside agency support as well. So I just wanted to reiterate that because I'm hearing that and I want to make sure parents know who to turn to. So your school counselors would be your first person to reach out to. So in terms of student cases, over the past week, since the last time we were together, we did have a few more cases. So prior to October 13th, so basically the 12th of October, that weekend, we had 4 students. From the 13th to today, we are up to, 4 students at the high school. So from the 13th through today, we have a total of 18 students. 11 of those students were at the high school, 6 of those students in middle schools, 1 elementary school. Also, the quarantining, and I know this is really confusing. So when I talk to parents about it often, I have to walk through different scenarios. Every case can be different because it depends on the onset of symptoms. Sometimes if somebody doesn't have symptoms, it depends on the date of their test. And so when we do contact tracing, which is required by the Department of Health, because this is considered a public health crisis, so we are cooperating with the Department of Health to ensure the community's safety. We look for people who are within 6 feet of that person who would be the positive case for 15 minutes or more. So unfortunately, buses tend to be a place where people cannot be more than 6 feet apart. It's just not going to happen. Some of our high school buses, they can because there's not that many kids on there. But an elementary bus or even a middle school bus, if a person on that bus is positive, we have to take the surrounding number of students and quarantine them. So it's important to note that we do not quarantine. The Department of Health sets the regulations on quarantining. They ask us to do the contact tracing because it just saves time for them to have to call the family, try to figure out who people are. The other thing that is important in terms of quarantining, we had 122 high school students quarantined prior to October 13th. Many of those quarantines ended this past weekend. The thing to also note is now at the high school we have 0 students quarantining, but we also have not been in school. That doesn't mean we haven't had positive cases, we just have not had to contact trace on any of those cases because the students have not been in class. So that's just an important distinction to make. In our middle schools, we had 7 students quarantined prior to the October 13th and 50 students since then. Elementary schools, 15 students and no students at this time. This is a pretty much evolving situation, so even these numbers need to be updated from, 3:30 we supported this, and we already have new numbers to add to this. So it is constantly moving, constantly changing. If you have questions, we certainly want you to reach out and ask. If you're not sure what's going on or why your child was quarantined, we want you to ask us those questions. But usually the Department of Health then will reach out with their own contact tracers. But unfortunately, they're so backed up we do the initial part of it for them so that you're not sending your child out or going out in the community with your child who may unfortunately have contracted the virus.
Thank you, Dr. Maloney. Are there any questions from board members for Mr. Rieger or Dr. Maloney? Thank you both.
Okay, so the board members, you've heard the comments out in the public, and Dr. Willicke, your recommendation on this, what is your recommendation? Where do you stand right now?
Sure. My recommendation remains unchanged from last week. I've had continued conversations today, a second call with the Department of Health and the Pennsylvania Department of Education, and they did review our most recent data, which we have shared. And unfortunately, our county continues to be in the substantial range, and their recommendation continues to be that we revert to remote learning in order to reduce the spread within the county. I also had conversation today with Dr. Jenkins of Excella Health, and also an email which was shared with the board from Dr. Carol Fox of Excella Health. And their input has shared the strain that is currently occurring on our health system in regards to the number of individuals hospitalized. Now, yes, those are not students, and thank goodness, no students or any of our staff members, but certainly looking at what's happening in our community. Our schools are a part of the larger community. So the safety and well-being continues to be my priority. I feel we can continue to address the education. Yes, it's not the same as in person, but that's something that unfortunately our current situation, to me, warrants making that change. I think this board is in a very difficult situation because I realize it's not the popular opinion. I would say if there's a thought for considerations, I mean, we've heard, and I agree the numbers are very low in the elementary. I also, in talking to the Department of Health today, they shared where the percentages are as far as looking at the total number of those testing positive in Westmoreland County, that the week before last, 26% of those tested were between the ages of 12 and 17. And the current past week, the most recent past week, that is now 37%. So we are seeing more cases in students 12 to 17 years old. So certainly that would be a consideration for this board if we wanted to take a look at having elementary continue and do something different with secondary or even the high school. I know we're to be looking at trends, and this is our second week. I know we had a meeting today with superintendents across the county, and everyone was talking about what they're doing, and some districts are moving to remote here this week. Others are delaying the decision another week. I think that could be another possibility would be to look at another data point. But I know today's numbers and what I saw on an email that I received from its Pittsburgh coronavirus update was that today's numbers were still in the 3 digits. So I'm not sure that we'll see anything different next week, but I just wanted to put those out as possibilities. But my recommendation will always be that we follow the Department of Health. Unfortunately, I wish that they would make the decision, and if they feel that there's a health risk, would say that we do need to close, but I feel in my position, looking out for the safety and well-being of our staff as well as our students, what I shared last week continues to be my recommendation.
So you're talking about the entire school district put into virtual?
I am, yes.
And
Correct.
as far as a long-term plan, you don't have anything on the horizon, no plan as far as opening up fully? Because
As far as
we
a
had talked
date, or you
about
mean
that.
plans?
Just a plan, not a date.
So yes, as I shared, we do have plans that were shared with the middle school teachers this week. I'm sorry, last week, today's Monday. As I shared with all of you, we are looking at a potential plan that would allow students who wanted to come to school every day, this is middle school, the opportunity to come and be in a large group area where they would be housed. And then because the middle schools operate on an 80-minute period, we would have the students switching those in the middle of the period so that the students would have time in front of their classroom teacher, but then also a portion of the period where they would be supervised in an area and able to continue to work. That would be our first phase, would be moving to middle school, and then we've had discussions and starting to consider what that may look like at the high school level. Now, at the high school level, the periods are shorter. They're not as long. They're only 40 minutes. So we would be looking at the number of available seats. So in most of our classrooms, Still 6 feet is our goal, just to reduce the number of students who are quarantined. So in most classrooms, you can fit possibly 17 students, and in some of our classes on the AB schedule, they are not full with 17 students. So we're looking at a way that we could possibly manage to be able to fill those remaining seats with students who wanted to attend every day. So those are all just brainstorming possibilities. Certainly, we're not looking at that in the very near future because of the current spread, but something that as we move from this back to the lower levels, we are looking at how to creatively allow more students to come every day, but yet to keep that 6 feet of social distancing.
Okay, thank you very much. And just to, you say you feel bad for us, that we have a tough decision. You have the weight of the world on your shoulders, and I understand where you're coming from, Doc. And I've already said to everybody, you know, the governor and the higher politicians have passed this down to the local level, and it's on our shoulders. But then we were elected to make this decision too. And just because it's passed down to us doesn't mean that we shouldn't take that on our shoulders, and doesn't mean we shouldn't make the right choice too for our children. So having said that, I'm going to go around the room of board members. Please, if you have questions, ask Dr. Willicke. If you have comments, please. These people all came here to hear our comments and to hear how we stack up. If there's a board member at the end of all the comments and questions from all the board members wants to make a motion other than what Dr. Willicke has said she wants to see done, you can make that motion. Our solicitor has said we do not have to suspend the rules to do that. You can also make the motion to support her plan, Dr. Willicke's plan, if you want to. But before we do any of that, let's start going around the room. And Sonia, you've got the floor. Go ahead and speak. Whatever.
I'm sure I'll be the first of many to say thank all of you for coming this evening. And thank you, everyone out there, for all the emails that we've all received. I had the opportunity and the pleasure of being around some high school students this weekend at an event, and took that opportunity to talk to some of them about what they wanted to see happen. And Madeline, no, I mean, I appreciate your comments, and I understand the struggles as an AP student. I had the opportunity to speak to 2 higher level students as well as some individuals in regular classes. Their biggest concern was they were fine if they would love to be back in school full time, but they didn't want to see us shut the school down. They would at least like to see us continue with the hybrid model, if at all possible. For many reasons, but certainly the socialization part of it. And one comment that sticks in my mind that one of the high school students made, that you're not going to stop them from going out after school. You're not going to stop them from socializing on the weekends. Those numbers are going to continue to change and go up, whether they're in school or not in school. And I think that was a very valid statement that the student made. We can only control what we can control in school. And when you hear the number that happened from our staff members today, I think that's alarming when the school has been closed for 2 weeks. I have never, ever gone against a recommendation of administration, but I think that if we could still keep our elementary students in school and continue our hybrid as we have, and see if it becomes a force of the government, then our hands are tied. We went against the recommendation and continued with sports. I think that education is 100% more important than sports everywhere.
That all, Sonia?
That's it.
Okay, Vince?
Sonia, I certainly appreciate those comments. I appreciate the public coming out. I don't want to take up too much time, but this board and this administration have a lot to evaluate when it comes to the virus. There's a lot of different opinions. You have people believing that we should be in school full time, 5 days a week, and others that think we shouldn't be in school at all. There's people that believe in masks and people that don't believe in masks. There's parents that think that the cyber program their kid is doing terrible, and there's others that love it. Our job as a school board member is to make a decision that, obviously is in the best interest of the students, their families, as well as our staff. So for me, I feel that our health and safety plan that we put together is the best around. And I can't wrap my head around thinking that taking kids away from a safe, monitored environment and sending them out into the community is a good idea, especially at the elementary level. We have one positive case out of, I think there's 2,287 kids in the elementary level. So, these poor families, some of these families may have to quit their job. You can't, I'm assuming you can't send all your kids to daycare, or you don't want them to stay home alone. So, and I also worry about our learning support students and those with special needs. So here's the other thing I really can't understand. If we have such a high positivity rate in the community, why we're still, why we're not pushed to the red phase. I know we go by low, moderate, and substantial, but there's also still the red, yellow, and green phase, and we're still in the yellow phase, I believe, correct?
No, those were replaced. The red is now equivalent to substantial.
Okay, so so in the community as well?
Yes.
So red, all the red equals substantial now.
Yep.
So non-essential businesses would be shut down if that's the case.
Red as it applies to education. So
That's what
in
I'm
our
saying.
reopening plan, where we indicated red, that we would move, to remote, that's now substantial.
But as a community itself, we're designated as what? Yellow.
So our school district.
Outside of the district.
Our school district, when you look at the mainline MAMA website, we are red for substantial.
Okay, but the
community
Walmart,
spread.
we're not in the shutdown phase as far as non-essential businesses.
Correct.
Right. So, to me, to stop the spread of the virus, you would think that closing down the Walmarts and the Home Depots and places where masks and social distancing are not mandatory, that would make sense. But that's not happening, and we're sending our kids out into that environment. For me, the bottom line is this: I can't find myself to follow the recommendation, and it's my opinion that in-person learning is not contributing to the risk. It's the activities people are doing outside of the school that are increasing the risk of the community spread. I feel as though our staff members are doing an unbelievable job with our current plan, and they should be commended. Again, to me, taking our students outside a safe, controlled environment will increase the risk rather than lowering it. And I think it's going to create added stress to the children and the parents. So I'm against the recommendation to go full remote, and I believe we should stay with the current hybrid model. And if parents feel unsafe, they have the opportunity to opt out of the brick and mortar and go cyber. Now, for me, that's not going against Dr. Wilicki. To me, it's supporting the health and safety plan that we have in place, because I think it's really, really good. So that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Before we get to you, Mike, Brandon, are we speaking into the microphone enough so that the public can hear us virtually? It's okay? All right. Mike Alfieri? Thanks, Vince.
Okay, again, thank you for everyone that came here to speak. Your interest is greatly appreciated. I think as a board and an administration, we have several obligations. And those obligations include feeding those that don't get at least 2 meals at home. We have an obligation to adhere to the guidelines of our IEP students. We have an obligation to make sure that those enrolled at CTC are there. That is a career-focused scenario, and if they skip a beat, that has a long-lasting impact. I go along a little bit with, I think Jerry said, he's a numbers guy. We are conducting more tests. I think I read that Westmoreland County conducted more tests than ever on Friday. And I think we'd all be pretty astonished if we had a way to test absolutely every resident, how many people would come back positive. The risk groups in this pandemic haven't changed. They always have been the elderly. We see hospitalizations. A lot of those hospitalizations don't turn into people needing a ventilator. We learned that was probably the wrong thing to do. These county numbers that we have, last week, the Manor had over 140, both patients and employees. The prison had, I do believe, almost 50. As far as I know, none of our students attend the Manor or prison for their education. What has changed is we understand this virus. We understand that the majority of the tests are from the age of 0 to 59, and that is the minority of fatalities. Vince mentioned that some people love the cyber program, some people struggle with it. We have the opportunity for people to keep their children in our cyber program. There was one heck of a lot of work that went into that. And as far as Tammy saying that she doesn't envy our decision being on the board, well, none of us envy hers or her team. In fact, I think I can speak for the whole board. We're very, very thankful that we do have the leadership through this that we've had. But like Lisa Altruffel said, and I think I'm the only one in the district that will pronounce that name correctly because she's married to my cousin, but she said that kids learn differently. And, I as a parent didn't realize how differently my children learned until their teachers told me. So I think it's important for us to make sure that our kids are in front of these teachers as much as they possibly can be. And I will reiterate without any disrespect to our administration that if we were to hold a vote tonight, I would vote to open 100%. At least let's stay in the virtual mode as per the PDE. But I just want to be on record that I am in full support of having these kids back in school. I do feel it's the least amount of risk for them. We hear often about the CDC and the Department of Health and the county webpage, the Blackburn Center, places like that. They tell us about the mental effects. And I'd rather look at unfortunately, a child gets COVID. I think they're probably down and out for 3 to 5 days. These other effects have a lifelong impact. So whatever we can do to mitigate that, I'm sure it's heck going to do it.
Thanks, Mike. Paul?
And I'll reiterate what everyone has already said. Thank you for the community members for coming out. And I think everybody's made great points. And I think we're all working hard. The administration has been working hard really all summer into opening in August. And I appreciate the one comment about this district showed strength in its approach in opening in August and pushing forward with sports. So I think, I think it's something I think a lot of us wanted to do and be leaders in what we're doing. I do have concerns about following the state guidance or the recommendation. And I'm going to read from the Department of Health. This is at pa.gov, and there's a section determining instructional models during the COVID-19 pandemic. And this is right above the section that deals with low, moderate, and substantial as far as the districts or what's considered the county's rating. All right, I'll read this. It is important to note that a safe return to in-person instruction will look different across every school, district, and county depending on a variety of factors, one of which is the spread of COVID-19. School entity decisions on instructional models require a great deal of consideration of local factors, including size of the school entity, classroom size, school resources, proportion of staff and students with special needs and underlying health conditions, and the ability to accommodate remote learning with equal access to all or for all students. The key I look at in there is one of the factors of which is the spread of COVID-19. And that is looking at the chart of what is now considered a substantial rating for the county. So I do think we should be looking at many of the other factors which have been discussed tonight and not just simply rely on the county, or I'm sorry, the Department of Education's recommendation to close. I have a couple of other comments, but I do have a question that comes out of this. And I've heard, and I know there were a lot of emails today, and I don't know if I received one on this, but I heard that the Department of Education, Pennsylvania Department of Education's recommendation is to close. in-person learning, but I didn't hear what their basis was for doing so.
So the call that I had today was in regards to us remaining in the substantial level. So the information that was shared, give me just 1 second, I'd like to pull up my notes. So they first discussed the data for the county, which is our incidence rate and our positivity rate. They then had an epidemiologist, and she talked about the trends. That's the data that I shared in regards to the 26% of students ages 12 to 17 and the 37% of students ages, 37% for the most recent week. Then Matt Stem, who is the department secretary, he said based upon that continued level of spread for our county in the substantial, that it is the recommendation that we would remove to remote-only instruction.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Willicke. So I guess I didn't see anything in writing, so they didn't issue anything in writing. This was a verbal communication to schools?
Correct, and that was our second meeting. We had a meeting last week, which I shared last Monday evening, that we had one on Monday. And because the data actually is calculated on Friday, so they schedule with school district superintendents when their counties are in that level for the following Monday. So we had our second meeting today.
Okay, thank you. I guess that does give me even more concern that it's not even written recommendations and it's simply pointing to the substantial category, because, I mean, if they talk about trends, but statistics can be used to explain a lot of different ways if you want to use the statistics to explain something. But I think I've seen the trends seem to be coming down with the numbers of cases. We've waited over another week since our last school board meeting to see how things were going. And I have copies of the one sheet from is that Mainline Mama website in Westmoreland County, and the curve of cases is headed down. And the positivity rate, I guess I'm confused because it doesn't add up to me. And I'm very confused as to the recommendation of it seems just a blanket. We're in the substantial category, but I just don't see that the numbers seem to be adding up. So that concerns me. So I personally think that we should do what the part that I just read about factoring in the districts, the community's various factors, use the virus spread as one of the factors, but shouldn't be the only decision. And that's the Department of Health's own guidance that tells us to do that, but then they come out with a recommendation that focuses on one factor. And I just think that seems irrational. The other thing I guess I would say is mental health concerns. I think that's been highlighted, and we've talked about that. So I think we really need to push to not shut down in-person learning completely. I would fully support, I think what everyone the group has pretty much said to this point of maintaining what we're doing now, which is elementary full-time, middle school and high school hybrid. But as soon as we possibly can, I would be ready to vote to open up, just like Mr. Alfieri had said, because the more I understand the guidance, I think the less I think it seems rational. So I think we have to do what's right for Hempfield Area School District, and to me, that's not shutting down. That's all, Dr. Bompiani.
Thank you, Paul. And Jennifer Bretz.
Thank you for everybody coming out tonight, and I hear everybody. I'm sympathetic to the parents and the students, and I have ladies that I work with that are dealing with working double shifts, and their children, they don't feel like they are being, they're not able to, be home with their children, or their children aren't engaged enough in the homeschool learning. I am for myself and listening to the fellow school board members, keeping the elementary full-time and the hybrid for the high school and the middle school. And I am for, I heard about the children and the just the emotional damage that is taking place. So I'm for keeping it in place how it is now.
Thank you, Jen. And Diane Subtoni.
I want to thank everyone for coming, those here in the audience and those at home. But I also want to thank the board. This is difficult, and we have so many different thoughts, and we care so much, but we are so different. And administration, they've just done wonderful things along with the teachers. But I think our plan has been excellent, and we've been told by the medical field that we do have one of the best plans. And so I've been really proud of that, even though it may not be working exactly how everybody would like. This is not a perfect situation. I prefer a hybrid, and I prefer the elementary schools being open. And even if we would close, I think I would like to see the elementary schools, if possible, stay open. But realizing basically who some of the experts are right here, and it's basically our administration, I will agree to our superintendent's recommendation.
And thank you, Diane. Jeannie Smith?
I'd also like to thank everybody who came out, and also everybody who has written emails to us or communicated with us in any way. There was a young woman who communicated even on Facebook today, and it was very helpful that she did that and said what was working for her. And I encourage people to reach out, and especially if your children are having difficulty, reach out and get the help that we do have here for them. As a couple people have already mentioned, we're very worried about our IEP students and our elementary students. We're worried about all of our students, but especially those, because our IEP students need the extra help. Our elementary students are getting their foundation in all learning at this point, and it is a big worry that they are not, if they are not able to be in school. I also feel that I would like to see elementary continue. I do not think that we are spreading this in our schools. I think we are being so careful, and we are doing the face mask. The kids are being wonderful with the face mask. Our cleaning methods are top-notch, and I don't think that it's spreading in the schools. And I understand that the kids are socializing outside of the schools, and we are not going to be able to control that, nor should we want to control that. We have enough on our plate as it is. But I would support definitely elementary staying the way we are, and having those parents who do feel that it is not safe going to a full-time online or to HACA to be able to continue to learn. As far as the middle school, I think the middle school could stay hybrid. And when is the high school coming back? That was my question.
Today. They returned today.
Today was their day back?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so, and they did return today?
Correct.
Okay. I would like to wait another week and see what the numbers do, because they did start to significantly go down. So I guess what I'm supporting is doing a hold and staying where we are at this point and not closing completely. And even if we did then next time have to do that, I would still want to keep elementary open, and I would like to see what we could do for those special ed students or IEP students who needed the help.
Thanks, Jeannie. Dr. Scott Learn.
Thank you. With everyone else, I'd like to thank you all for attending and speaking. And I'd like to commend the administration, teachers, staff, and the students for doing such a great job up to this point. I have unique perspective from this for the situation we're in. You know, I'm sensitive to it. I lost my mom in March to complications I think are due to COVID. She'd been in a hospital for 4 days with breathing trouble, and you know, we weren't able to go visit her, and she passed, and I think that was the part that hurt the most. I tell you this not because I want sympathy, but because I know many families have lost loved ones due to this outbreak, and I'm certainly not feeling sorry for myself. But I tell you this, that after I went to visit her after she passed, and this is in March, I talked to the nurse, and the nurse, I said, "Did you test her for COVID?" And the nurse said, "Well, no, because she didn't have a fever." And this was in March, so we know now that many, like up to 30% of the people that have COVID don't exhibit a fever, right? So the purpose of the story is things we know didn't know back then, we know now. And information gets better, opinions change, and policies should change. I also have another interesting perspective because I'm honored to be serving on the Joint Operating Committee of the Central Westmoreland Career and Technology Center. And last week I was glad to work with Dr. Willicke and our Executive Director, Jason Lucia, to enable our Hempfield and CWCTC students to be able to attend the Central Westmoreland CTC while we were doing remote learning, and they really appreciated that. We decided to stay open full-time at the Central Westmoreland CTC because Jason feels this way. If we're teaching students to prepare for industry and industry is still open, then we need to be open. And at this time, we have 9 sending schools at Central Westmoreland CTC, and there are 4 of them right now that are actually planning to stay open, and there's a couple on the bubble. So we need to keep these students going there too, because remote learning does not work for them either, because that's a hands-on education. So I will address a couple of those, Thomas, as far as the mask. You know, at this point, there's no evidence that the masks are causing cavities, because I'm a general dentist and I know this. And I've been following studies, so people have been asking. But I think a lot of it's just because a lot of people are not able to drink water as much. And so what I wanted to say in closing is, those of you who are involved in sports may have heard, it's not what you do when people are watching, it's what you do when people aren't watching. And we all need to make smart decisions in this community. That related to sports is training. You know, you train when people aren't watching you. What we need to do as a community is we need to be smart with our decisions. We need to, as I said, you know, I'm a general dentist. You know, our profession is the worst, if not one of the worst, for producing aerosols, which are thought to spread the virus. And I don't know there's been very few, if any, reports of any dental offices spreading, because we're doing it right. We always do it, a lot of us, we always do it right, and we need to do it right as a community. We need to wear our masks, we need to do our distancing, and we need to really be mindful of our gatherings, because we know that's where they're coming from. So I think if we could do that as a community, we're going to do well. My feeling is, I don't think we should go backwards. I think we need to move forward. I think, you know, continue on the course we are right now, and you know, and as some others said, I think we need to look at opening up as soon as possible. That's my thoughts. Thank you.
Thanks, Scott. I appreciate it. Before we move on to a question I have for you, Dr. Willicke and Mike, our solicitor, I want to thank the staff for setting this up so quickly. I mean, we have a couple with Brandon and Rob in the back. Thank you very much. It takes a lot to set something up like this and make it happen. And Dr. Willicke, for you offering it and ordering it. I mean, we didn't ask for public necessarily, but you jumped right out there, and she wanted the public here, up to 250 people. So we want to thank you very much for what you did. And your staff, please pass that on if you don't mind.
Thank you.
My second comment is to Madeline. Are you still here, Madeline? Dr. Willicke, is there some way with her questions, I mean, she can't be the only student, is there some way, or is there an avenue for her to discuss, or who would she go to talk about her specific problems that she was having with this, so that we know that we touch on it no matter what we do with the learning part?
Right, I would say to her principal, that would be the first line. I know many of the issues that she addressed were technical issues, and certainly that's something that if we're having those kinds of issues continuously, our principal should know. Mr. Wagner in the back of the room would certainly want to know so that we can address those. I was not aware that we were having that frequent of issues. And I just want to mention, because I know, Madeline, you mentioned more, what I'm going to refer to as asynchronous instruction, and saying just provide the assignments and allow students to do them at their own pace. That's actually the model that we're encouraging our teachers not to use, because we feel that asynchronous is when you do the work, there are assignments given and you do the work on your own. Synchronous is what we've asked our teachers to engage students in that type of learning where it's in real time. And I've had the great benefit of observing several outstanding lessons that are synchronous where, and I'll just share two examples. On Friday, I was in two classrooms at Harold Middle School. There were students in front of the teacher and there were students online. And the teachers, both of them, did just a great job of asking questions of the students in front of them, questions of the student online at home, and they could hear one another's questions. And it was really and I say it was different because they were in a different location, some of them, but they were engaged in the same lesson and they were hearing the questions and responses of one another. And then I watched a math lesson where the teacher just did a phenomenal job of taking everyone at the beginning of the lesson. There were 16, I believe, at home, and I think he had maybe 8 students in front of him. And he taught the lesson, like just the introduction and kind of the opening. But then he gave a task for the kids to do in front of him, and then he went into these breakout rooms of a Google Meet where there were different meets for he took the 16 and divided them. But then he monitored what was going on in front of him, then he monitored what was going on with each of the other groups, and then at the end he brought it all back together. So that's what we're encouraging our teachers to do, where it's not for the students at home to just do the work whenever they get to it. It is to engage students in the work as it's occurring, because we feel there's added benefit. So I think that's something to talk to then even the principal, because I think that will share our perspective of why we want it to be more than just assignment driven. But I would say that the first place would be with the principal. A long answer to your question. I apologize, Dr.
Oh, that's
Barbiani.
okay. I'm glad you are. I mean, she took time out of her evening to come here and speak to us, and I think it's wonderful that, and Madeline, if you hear something you think's a stone wall, there's no stone wall here. This superintendent and her staff want to hear from you, and your principal's the first place to go, but make sure you keep airing them, because you know what? Mr. Alfieri mentioned it earlier about our virtual learning. We're so excited about it because we can keep our students here, we can keep them, as we've talked about before, and we want to make it the very best in the state, in the world, to make it for our students. So you're an integral part. If there's problems, we need to hear it, so go to your principal. The other thing I wanted to talk about, just for just a minute, is the fact of subs, because it sounds like we're having a problem. In June, I brought up the fact to the entire administration and the board, about a number of issues, the pay for subs and the lack of subs. I knew, and I think everybody here around this table knew, we were going to have a problem come this time right now, because everybody needs subs. I love what one of the gentlemen had said about the emergency teaching. We can do that, and I would only ask that the staff, and I'm sure you already are, Tammy, because you're on top of most everything we're doing, is that we are looking at something, and if we have to do something special to attract more subs, I think this board would be very much in favor of doing that, because we want to keep open if we can. It sounds like the overwhelming is that we want to keep open, and that's probably going to be the drawback, because we know, we were told by Excella, the flu is worse for these children than the COVID virus. Now, they said they backed off on the flu was more dangerous than everybody, but when I asked them about the flu being more dangerous to the kids than the COVID virus, they didn't disagree with that. And that was our last meeting with them. And if I'm mistaken, I'm mistaken. I've done that before. But in any case, one thing we do know, our kids are safer in this school system than they are out and about with all their friends running everywhere. So it's a lot better for having them here in a number of issues, their mental health, the food, everything that they get here. But beyond that, the sanitation, the social distancing, or whatever else that is out there, where they're going to be socializing. You can't stop them, just like someone had said earlier. So having said those couple things, I've always been in favor of going back, getting our kids to normal, because it crushed all of us to see what happened in the spring. I agree with what Mr. Alfieri is saying. I always want to support our administration because they do put the time and effort into it. But here's where we're at, and as Scott said earlier, I don't want to go backwards either. I want to keep going forward if it's all possible. I would like to encourage, no matter what vote is taken here tonight, I would like to encourage the staff to really come up with a plan as much as they possibly can to get us back to normal, to get the students, even in the secondary and high school, back to 5 days if it's possible at some time soon. So, without further ado with that, and with anything more, anything else from board members? Sonia, go ahead.
I had two questions really quick. One, and I don't know if this would be for Tammy or perhaps since Brandon is in the room, there was discussion when I talked to the students about lesson bot. Can we confirm that those lesson bots are up and running with all the staff? Because there was concern with some of the students I spoke with that not all teachers are using them or they're not operational in all rooms yet. And I don't know if they are or not.
Mr. Wagner would be able to indicate if there are open tickets for those that, if they're not working, a teacher would then submit a ticket for his or her device to be repaired. I'll turn that over to him for any questions in regards to the specific tickets. But we do also have Mrs. Testa, who is supporting teachers in using those devices.
Okay.
So I know when she becomes aware of something that's not working, she assists as well in getting that corrected.
Okay, so maybe it's just not that they're not familiar, not operational. I'm just asking.
Yeah, Mr. Wagner's coming to the podium to
Okay,
take
and maybe
that
while
question.
he's walking down, I mean, I was listening to the news before we came. Obviously, and you're dealing with superintendents. How many had already decided to go full remote? I had heard via the news, Derry and York were 2. I heard
announced.
PT was staying status quo. Do you know of any others that decided full remote? I heard a couple of them were kind of waiting to talk to school boards this week, but have you heard who was kind of doing what in our area?
Sure. Several of them were having meetings this evening as well.
Okay.
So I think the districts that you mentioned were those that announced.
Derry and York were the 2 that said they were full remote.
Yes,
PT, I know, was staying status quo,
correct.
which is basically the hybrid. They're not in full.
Yeah, I don't know their model per se.
Elementary schools are every day. Middle school is, they have the option of staying home, but it's, 5 days, like we were going 5 days last week. High school is a hybrid schedule.
Thank you.
Greensburg-Salem tonight decided to stay hybrid.
The Greensburg-Salem's hybrid, so status quo, okay.
Okay, Brandon? Oh, I'm sorry, Tam, do you want to say?
that's good.
Brandon, go ahead.
Hello. Yes, we are not aware of any issues currently with the systems. All cameras were hung in every classroom. Teachers have portable ones. What most we see are using is just a screen sharing capability because it's a higher quality for the recording and for the students. But if there are any issues, just have the teachers reach out and we can definitely address it.
So if the students are saying they're not being utilized, should the students report there's an issue to the building principal, or how would that work? Because again, I was with a couple of students that said they're not being utilized. So how does that pan out then?
I can certainly run logs and discuss them with Dr. Riefinek and Dr. Connor.
Okay, just to see if they are all being utilized. Perfect. Thank you.
Thanks, Sonia. And Brandon, thank you very much. Brandon's our IT guy. Brandon Wagner's doing a great job for us. Thank you. A lot of this wouldn't be good. Did somebody over here want to talk? Diane?
Yeah, Brandon, what about the Chromebooks? Does everyone have them who needs them?
Every 6th grade through 12th grade student does have a Chromebook at their disposal. For elementary, the shipment that we ordered back in, I want to say July, I think the board approved it, still has not arrived. There was a survey conducted, we're still at like under 500? 519 devices, should the board move to go to full remote. And we do have sufficient devices to cover those 519 elementary students. We do not have enough to give every single student one device.
But the survey asked if they have a personal device that they
Yes.
could use.
Personal devices will be fully sufficient to conduct any remote learning as long as it has a webcam.
Thank you.
I think Vince had a question too,
Vince?
Tony.
Okay,
I didn't know, I
Vince
think
is
Vince.
me. Yeah, I
So-
actually had seen him earlier. Thanks, Sonia.
When we're looking, I think this would be for Lisa because she uses this the most. The Mainline Mama website that I know it's
I
terrible,
know,
but
it is.
just so we know, or the public knows, I guess, because I think you went over this last week a little bit. When you look at it says Hempfield Area School District 21.84% test percent positive. When you look at that number, that includes every zip code that is within the school district, correct?
Correct.
And that is not necessarily the school students. So
Correct.
right?
That is correct.
Okay, so we've had basically three, and hear me out because I could be wrong. You guys all have DR in front of your name and I don't. So we've had three major outbreaks in the county, right? So we had the jail, Westmoreland Manor, and I believe the nursing home in North Huntington. 15601, 15601, and 15642. So all of those would be part of this, correct? Even though,
I believe those, are you talking about current? Because those were like last week, I think? Is that
right,
what
so,
you're
but it would
saying?
have been part of the 2 weeks.
Yeah, I don't know the breakdown regarding the manor. I don't have that information, and it's not broken down that way.
Okay, so we cannot
So
really.
even to say the Greensburg is probably the manor, right? Is it Greensburg zip?
Yeah, right.
So I don't know
15601
what, I don't
would
know
be-
how you detract the manor numbers daily, because I don't know what they are
Yeah.
daily based on that.
And I
zip.
think that would be the case for all three of those, because the nursing home that had, I think it was, I don't know the name of it, transitions or something, but
Right, in our-
it's 15642, which would essentially, that is a Norwin School District area, but it's still considered in our zip code.
Right, because we have students that, well, and it breaks it off, I believe, in that area where we're at.
Okay. So those numbers, like Jeanette, like a 15644 zip code would, some of that's Hempfield Township, some of that's the
Right.
city of Jeanette. So this isn't really, unless you're able to break this down according to district, that number's not accurate when it says Hempfield Area School District 21.84.
Yeah, I don't know how if she does it by lines. I'm guessing probably not, it's just areas.
Okay. I just
Yeah,
wanted to
I
make-
can't speak to that.
I just
It
wanted
would
to
be
look at that
speculation.
because a lot of people bring it up. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Did you have something, Mike?
A couple things. I don't think that is accurate, but I think Youngwood had 11 tests and 6 positives. So that would skew the percentage if you're looking at it by percentage, right? And then secondly, just for point of interest for me, Bob Rieger, you may know this. If we have a total number of positive cases since school began, do we know if we have any hospitalizations? Do we have a total number of positive cases since we started school? And if so, do we have any hospitalizations? Staff or student?
Members hospitalized, no. I'll repeat that. Staff hospitalizations, no. Immediate family members of staff members, yes. And the total number, did you ask since we, Mr. Alfieri, the total number of positives since we came back to school?
Yes.
That was emailed to you earlier today.
98?
Yeah, that would be the, excuse me one
The whole
second.
year.
11 and it'd be 18 staff members.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that. Anybody over here, questions? Jeannie?
I did have a question about how we're doing with our subs, and I am very worried about the staff. And again, though, have we been able to trace any staff members that have gotten sick from being at work as opposed to maybe from the community?
Our current spike, I believe we're going to be able to trace it back to the workspace. But we're working with
I
the
couldn't
Department of
hear-
Health on that issue. But our
Did you-
current spike that we saw over the last 96 hours, I think, Lisa, we feel confident that we are going to be able to trace that back to the work environment.
Okay, that does concern me. And how are we doing with subs for the staff that have to either quarantine or are out ill?
The substitutes at a premium, as we indicated at the beginning of the school year, we started the year with about 160 substitutes. We have taken that down to about 60 confirmed. What we saw was a lot of charter schools hired a lot of our substitutes, not only Hempfield Area School District substitutes, but many substitutes in the surrounding area. And substitutes are at a premium. A lot of school districts did increase the daily rate, as we did back in September, but we are short daily. And what we're doing and we're trying to do is when our teachers are quarantined and or sick, we are working with those individuals to work remotely, to get on and continue their lessons and using the use of lesson bots and Google Meets and so forth. And they are doing and providing the direct instruction for the kids. I would say we're probably at 95% of our quarantined and positive staff members doing that. However, we still need to backfill that classroom so there is adult supervision in that room. We have been working collaboratively with the HAEA in having other teachers fill in, having other adults in the school buildings fill in. At the elementary buildings, there's probably not a day that goes by in which a principal is not providing direct instruction. There's not a day that goes by where a building aide may not be a supervisor in the classroom. So long story short, we are experiencing a shortage of substitutes.
What happens when we can't fill the seats of the teachers who aren't able to work?
For those individual staff members who are not able to participate in remote learning, we are then securing a substitute teacher within the area of certification to the best that we can to provide the direct instruction for that period of time.
Can I just remind the board and administration that the questions that are being asked and answered are fine because you're not directly personally identifying individuals. If you were to do so, that would be a violation of their privacy rights under HIPAA and those kinds of things. So I'm just reminding you to talk in general terms, talk about numbers. That's all well and good, but do not talk about any specific individuals so that they're identifiable. Okay?
I guess my question, Bob, was if we got to a point where we couldn't get a sub or we didn't have enough adults to cover or enough teachers couldn't work remotely because they were too ill, are we going to have to shut down? Maybe that's a question.
That could be a reality. It
That is
certainly
a
could.
reality. I hope we don't
Right.
have to answer that question that's posed at this moment in time. But collectively, the superintendents, Dr. Malicki, Dr. Refanak, Dr. Connor, Dr. Maloney, we meet throughout the day, each day, and we talk about these very issues. And we're hopeful that we don't get to that point where we will not have enough people to cover the classrooms.
Thank you.
But I'm sorry, I do not have an answer for that question. Dr. Maloney will have a comment.
I just wanted to make a comment about the question, can we trace it back to buildings? I just want to explain, because I think sometimes there's maybe a misunderstanding. When a person is positive, their household members are not even recommended to get tested by the Department of Health unless they're showing symptoms. And so oftentimes we might have a person in the household who tests positive, but no one else in the household has been tested, so we can't say whether or not those family members were positive or negative or where it came from. So I just want to be clear about that. It's not a clear line of here's a positive case, oh, here's a positive case, so these must be connected, because sometimes there might be a missing piece between positive cases that just makes it a little complicated. So I hope that helps explain that.
Thank you.
Scott, do you have something?
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate something that Mr. Alfieri had mentioned regarding the numbers. We were referring to that mainline MAMA, which is statistics on the area and the school district. And one of the problems that I see is the numbers, the percentages aren't weighted properly. You know, he mentioned Youngwood, for instance, is one of the areas in our district. Today it was 14 tests, 6 people tested positive. That's 42%. Well, if you had 2 people tested, 1 person test positive, that's 50%. Well, that's 1 person, and you're talking about 6 people. So it can be. I don't think it's weighted properly, and that's why I'm skeptical of those numbers. So I mean, that's just one example, but I just feel that we need to look at other criteria also.
I don't know why you're all picking on my hometown. Jeez, let Youngwood alone, okay? One more thing?
My hometown too, Tony. Thank
Oh,
you.
that's right, I'm sorry. You started it, though.
I do have a question. It may be for Mike. Is our quarantine procedure based on Department of Health suggestions, or is it a like, for example, the gentleman earlier said he works in healthcare,
Yep.
and if he comes in contact, he doesn't have to quarantine unless he shows symptoms. So is that something that it's derived and mandated, or?
When you have a situation that occurs and the Department of Health gets involved, they are the ones that make a determination as to what course of action needs to be taken relative to quarantines. And based on the contact tracing, that will dictate who then would be subject to the quarantine. And the circumstances could lead that to be either quarantining for, a 10-day period or a 14-day period. It depends on the particular facts and circumstances of the identification of somebody who either has tested positive for the COVID or has been exposed to someone that's tested positive for the COVID. But that's, unless you know anything to the contrary.
And Dr. Maloney has, she talks with them numerous times a day with our contact person, so she's our DOH expert here.
So typically, most people would quarantine. There are some job classifications which are termed essential workers. And essential workers, some first-line workers, police officers, even if somebody in the household is tested positive, they just have to monitor for symptoms because the belief is that they would, to continue the infrastructure, they would have to go to work. So I think that might be, is that what you were talking about, as essential worker? I forget who said they were an essential worker.
Yes, but aren't teachers essential?
They're not identified as
No.
essential by the Department of Health or by, I don't believe, I don't know who determines that, but the Department of Health does not have them listed. So there are certain categories that are considered essential. At this time, teachers are not considered under that category.
Well,
So
I
we
just-
quarantine our teachers.
I disagree with that categorization.
Well, you can, I mean, I didn't
I know.
create it.
She's talking about the
I'm just telling you what the Department of Health
Okay,
told
so
us.
we're going to move on to a more direct situation. And I think some of that's referred to certain companies too, because I even know one that was mentioned earlier, that they tell their people who work there, if you don't have a fever and if you don't lose your sense of smell, just come to work. And I mean, a lot of companies are doing that. But in any case, that's neither here nor there. Any more comments before we have a motion to be put on the board, on the floor? Do I have a motion? Vince, you called for the meeting.
What do I do? Oh, yeah. Well, I make a motion to vote to keep the hybrid model and go against the recommendation of the PDE.
I'll second that.
Can you read the motion again? Sorry.
Specific motion is so I guess it would be motion to go against the recommendation of the Pennsylvania Department of Education. Is that the exact, is it the Department of Education and the Department of Health?
I don't think that you want to word it in that fashion. I think that you want to word it as to the motion in a positive sense. What is it that you want to do?
Continue.
I think what
To
you want
continue.
to say is to continue the plan.
We want to, okay, so we want to make a motion to continue with the plan that is currently in place in the school district.
Can we just be more specific? Just because our currently approved plan states full remote when we're in the red? So just so we can be clear, so
So
when
do
we
we
say
have to-
continue the current practice, and actually, I think we listed
As
it
long as
as in
we're
the
allowed.
yellow. So we're saying elementary open as it currently is?
Correct.
And secondary in the hybrid?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Of elementary attending daily and secondary in the hybrid model.
And Mike, is
Yeah,
that-
that's correct,
Is
as
that
long as we're,
correct?
I mean, we don't have to make a motion to go against our current plan. Is that essentially what that's doing? I didn't know if you had to make two separate motions.
No, we
No.
only need one motion.
No.
Okay, all right.
That would be sufficient.
Is there a second to the motion?
I second.
Second by Mike, sorry. Is there discussion? Did you want to say something first, Mike?
No, I just wanted to be certain that his second was, he was still going to second it based on the explanation that was given, the clarification.
Right. And I wanted the second so we can discuss. Is there any discussion on this? Anything? Jeannie?
Is that, do we want to put any kind of stipulation on it for a week until we see what the numbers do? Or do we want to say indefinitely? What are we saying as far as a
What-
timeline?
We would be looking at the numbers, and Dr. Willicke would be getting a hold of us anyway. Why don't we just let it go the way it is, and then
Does it
if
have to
there's a
go on
problem, she can bring it to the attention of the board. And if there's going to be a change, we can do what we have to do to make that
It
change.
goes to another, we just go a week, right?
What's that?
I mean, we'll get the update in a week. It's not a 2-week thing again, right? Does it start over?
We
Where you have
get, the report we are provided is weekly.
Okay, so it doesn't have to be another 2 weeks.
Correct.
All right.
Yes.
Yeah, then I'm good with that.
Any further discussion or comments?
Actually, I do have a comment, and it goes to the point of the fact that I think, Dr. Willicke, you mentioned we're going against the plan because if we're in red, we're supposed to be all online learning. I think we need to relook at the plan because I completely disagree that we're going against the plan. The red, yellow, green doesn't correlate directly with low, moderate, and hybrid. I know I think you say it does, but I've been all over the website, and I don't believe that's the case. Haven't seen them connect the dots on that in terms of, so our plan specifically refers to red, yellow, and green. That's not what we're going based on, so I think we should change the plan.
And I'm shaking my head, I'm agreeing, just because the state never updated the template. So really, our current plan is written according to the template that we were required to use at the
Right.
time. But then the state changed the designations, but they never changed the template. So we can change and make our own change with a new template and submit that for
Yeah,
board
I
approval.
just don't
and
think
to
it
align.
correlates directly over, so I think we need to look at that and
Okay.
understand it, because I don't think it's direct. So I don't think we're going against our plan, because I don't think our plan is up to date.
I would agree with you, Paul. I think we need to update that plan.
Thank you, that's all.
Any other comments? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition?
No.
Would you please poll the board, Bob? Or Tammy?
Bob will do it, he has the paperwork.
Roll call? Did you say roll call?
Roll call, yeah.
Mr. Alfieri?
Yes.
Ms. Bragic?
Yes.
Ms. Bretz?
Yes.
Ms. Zibatoni?
No.
Mr. DeAugustine?
Yes.
Dr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Ward?
Yes.
Dr. Learn?
Yes.
Dr. Bompiani?
Yes.
The vote is 8-1, passes.
Okay.
Bob, did you get who seconded that motion at the
Mike
very
Alfieri.
beginning? Did you
Mike
get that?
Alfieri, I have.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, just
Motion by
making sure
Vince,
you got
second
it.
by Mike Alfieri. Before we ask for an adjournment, I just want to compliment all of you for being so professional, and your comments were so spot on to what you believe it. And I want to compliment the board, the questions, the notes you took, and how you delved into this was totally professional. And of course, I want to thank our staff. You've done a lot of work to this, and it's good that we can all work together, and maybe you'll come back with the other additions to the plan you and Paul were talking about, Tammy, and the thoughts on the subs. Maybe we can work on that as well. Anything else from board members? Do I have a motion for adjournment?
Motion to
Second.
adjourn. Second.
Mike Alfieri, motion adjourned. Sonia Bretz, join you guys. Sonia Bragic, seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying